Okay, this next one is setting up and marking where the holes are for the cam bearings. And they tell you to use a Allen key, run it through the hole, and then just put a nice mark right there where your oil hole comes right through. And we can see that one there. So then I'm going to eyeball that one and put a mark there too. That was actually a little high. Right there somewhere. Okay, so got that one marked. Got that one marked. Now I need to pull this out, go through each of these, give me kind of an idea of where it's coming through. Try to reach in here the best I can. Give myself an idea of where those holes are. So when I start putting the cam bearing in, I kind of have an idea where that oil hole needs to try and line up. And this is not easy. Try to get in here and mark these at all. Small books are kind of tight. And let's see, about in there somewhere. And last one, kind of in the same place. There we go. Now our holes kind of gives us an idea of where we need to line up the holes when we start trying to put the cam bearings in. Especially this one. This one's really important. This has got two holes, and that bearing, I think, rolls over and feeds into that one, if I'm not mistaken. And then goes through and feeds the bottom side of the distributor. Gives a little bit of lubricant on the bottom side to keep it from seizing up. So that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to drive these in one at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At least I think that's the order I'm going to go in. I know that's not number 1, but back of the block forward I'm counting 1 through 5, but technically this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I'll make sure they get in the right place. And I'll let you guys know how that works. Another thing I have never done, knock them out. That's okay. You don't have to worry about ruining them, knocking them out. But it's a little different putting them in. Kind of got to watch out what you're doing. And the other thing is, the tip that I had for this was that you put the first one in, slide your cam in, kind of roll it, make sure you're kind of centered in here, so that way you can tell if it's turning or binding. Then put your next bearing in, put the camshaft in, make sure it turns freely, doesn't bind. And keep doing that until you get all the way to the front, so that way if you find out you have a bind, you can attempt to fix it or have to drive it out and put a whole new bearing in, which you'll have to buy a whole new set for that. So hopefully we won't run into any of those issues. But you know how engine building goes. Always a possibility. You'll run into issues. So I'll drive in the first one and then we'll check back and let you know how things went. Okay, so we've got in bearing 5, 4, and 3. And we're doing good. Cam turns with minimal effort. So that means they're all going in beautifully. I mean, once you break over that initial hold, thing just rotates with a little oil beautifully. And one thing I notice is a lot of people fighting these bearings, and I don't know why people try to make it complicated. I mean, I haven't done a lot of cam bearings, don't get me wrong. I'm not a professional at this by any means. But each of these holes is just a little bit bigger than the next. This front one is way bigger than number 5. So you can literally put your cam bearing on the cam tool and feed that thing all together all the way through until it hits the spot where it's supposed to go in. Then it will not go in anymore. That's the point at which you have to drive it. I have seen people take those bearings and put them down in here and fish the tool all the way through and try to slide that bearing on that tool after it gets in there. And maybe it's different on other models, but Fords, the simplest thing ever. Just put the bearing on the tool, feed it all the way through till you get to the spot where it needs to go. It can't get any simpler than that, folks. So I'm going to pull this cam back out and I will show you number 2. Because now it's getting kind of down to those last 2 is where I think you're technically supposed to come back the other direction from the back and put in number 1. But I think I'm just going to try to go through the front like I see everybody else do it. But I think I can definitely shorten up my rod here. I think I can switch to a shorter rod, but I'm actually not sure because I don't think the weight transfers over to the short rod. So I think I still have to use this one. I'll check it out and I'll let you know. But I'll try to set it up and show you putting in cam bearing number 2 and maybe even 1. I'm not sure. But we'll see how it goes. Okay. So, setting up this next one. We've got our tool. And I think I do have to use the long one here. So, easiest thing for me is find a notch so that you can put that on there and kind of keep track of where this is at, in case you're in an area where it's hard to eyeball. And then you just want to make sure that thing is seated firmly on those collars. And then I give it a good twist until it feels like it's about the same as the outside diameter, because we're not driving it through, so we don't need it to be smaller to make sure that we don't drag across the inner surface of the cam bearing bore. So, and with my hand, I highly doubt I'm going to stretch that metal out to cause a problem with that thing going in. So I feel like it's got a good amount of bite. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. And I think we're ready to go with this one. Now, like I'm hopefully going to show you right here, this bore is larger than this one. So there it is, bearing all the way in, and look at that. Give it a little wiggle, and she goes right on through, like she should. And then, boom, right there. She stopped because now that bearing is that size. And then I see my mark right there, so I try to center that in that mark. I'm holding my cone out here, hopefully you can see that too. And my choice of destruction is a 3-pound little small sledge. I've seen people just use the regular 1-pound ball peens, and I think that's totally fine, but this is working good for me. It feels solid. I'm not afraid that arbor is going to bounce off the bearing and cause damage to the edge. Hopefully it's not going to. So let's just give it a, yeah, I mean, it just went in like butter. And I just kind of keep my hand tight against the comb, but not too tight that it won't let it go in. And now you see the first part of that disappearing. Nice and solid. Let's get closer. And I'm going to stop right there. Set that down ever so gently, and most of the time you don't even have to grab this. Give the thing a little turn, it'll loosen right up, maybe a smidge to get it out of there. Then we're going to set this somewhere out of the way now that I moved all my stuff. They won't roll off my bench here behind me. And first thing we're going to do is get the old flashlight and look down this hole, and that sucker was dead centered on that one that time. That is just awesome. So my slot that was in that bearing, these slots here are dead centered in that hole. On a stock engine, I don't think it's very critical as long as that is in the area of the hole. Some people always try to have them dead centered. If you look at where it goes in and where it stops, I mean, it looks, you kind of know where I think you should stop by where it looks in those areas. So this one's centered. This one is, I think, slightly forward. It is slightly back. So the very back edge of this is just a smidge in front of the back side of the hole. So then I've got this one, and it's covering up about that much of the hole. So I've got it open from about there back, it looks like. Maybe slightly in front of center of the hole. It should roll just fine. This one back here, this one, the starting edge is about right there on the back side, and the front side's about right there. Not quite centered, slightly back. And the back one here, even though it looks like it should be exactly where it needs to be, this hole is actually on the very back edge of that hole, and it is right through the center. I have seen some people not like that, and they will get in there and notch out those holes, which I would have to drive that bearing out, throw it away, go ahead and widen up that hole, and then drive in a new one. I don't think I've ever seen anybody just run a drill bit through there and drill those things out while they're in there. I think that would open up too much problems. But we've got that one in. This is our last one we'll have to do on the outside. I'll have to decide if I'm going to try to go reverse or forward. That is undetermined at this moment. I need to contemplate that just a smidge. But we can grab our camshaft again and check our bearing just like we have the last three. Going ever so gently, and try to guide it through without hitting and messing up any of these other bearings. Let it rest, reach my finger through, support it, get it through. Okay, that's good. And I do have a long bolt back here to help with a little bit of leverage, but it's still kind of nice to be able to guide it through with your finger ever so gently and just try to keep it from touching any of those other bearings. That's nice and good there. Now we're getting in home stretch. This is where it gets a lot tougher. I'm trying to get this through without touching anything. Oh, there we go. Oh man, look at that. Number 4. Still turning like a beaut. I'm liking this. That's, you know, one pin on the piston. That kind of bummed me out. But this is coming along great. And if I can get this last bearing in up front here without having any more issues, I'll at least feel some vindication for the week's activities. So, like I said, there is no binding, I think, at all. This thing is just, it's turning, it's beautiful, it sounds good. It doesn't sound like it's got any problems. So I would feel that these things are right where they should be. So, I'm just going to bore you with taking this thing out. We're just going to, I'll pull it out. I'll decide what I'm going to do with this last bearing. I don't know if I'll shoot it or not, but if I get this last one in, because bad thing about the way I've got it set up here is I would have to take it off to be able to drive the bearing this way. That may not be true. Well, yeah, my hole's probably not lined up right, but this thing actually is hollow through the center of here, and I thought, well, hell, maybe that's the reason why they hollowed that out, so you can use your cam bearing tool. And I guess if you set your highs and lows right and line it up with the cam bore, you probably could use your cam tool through that into this thing. I never considered that. That is kind of interesting. Weird things that pop into your mind when you're contemplating how to do something else and thinking about it. So that's where we're going to break on this one. We'll get this last one in. I'll check it again, make sure everything's free. Hopefully it goes in square, no problems, and we'll be done with the cam bearings. And we could probably put the crankshaft in for the last time. I could sit there and check all of my rod bearings, make sure they're all good, get these camshaft lubed up, probably could put in a retainer plate, or have a friend come over and help, and we can get this thing off here and get the cam plug put in the back here. So we'll figure it out from there, and we'll let you know. Okay. Looking good. That one's in there. Feels like it's in straight. Cool. Maybe everything will be good. Guess stick camshaft in, we'll find out. There's a possibility it could be off a little since I don't have any way to guide it straight. So there's always a possibility I may have to tap on it back and forth to kind of center it up. Hopefully I won't. It's feeling pretty good. I'm confident. Just got to be confident. There we go. Yes. Confidence is high. Hardly any effort to turn it. That is beautiful. It means I got them all in pretty damn straight. That is awesome. One more piece of the puzzle down. We're moving on.